first technique is going to start from standing position. We're going to work on a pretty simple takedown that's very effective and really not a high risk technique. So it's always imperative that we have inside control, because if I'm in here, I'm safe. If Vlad gets his hands in on me, now all of a sudden my takedowns become but useless. So if I use my forearm as a frame, I don't want to lock my arm out. Forearm right here, try to catch the crown of his head. So now this is where I go for an inside grip on the bicep. And when I'm using the bicep grip, my elbow comes under his forearm, giving me that ability to manipulate his arm up and down. So as I'm going through this technique, the off balancing is very important. You can't take someone down just standing still. If I go to shoot, Vlad's going to be very strong. So typically, I use this over grip on his elbow or tricep, and I get a pull. So once he makes that step, I'm really set up here. So now I'm going to hang. And as I'm hanging, I'm driving my forearm across and causing right here. If you really notice, I pull this elbow tight. That way he doesn't have an easy time to pull back. And even if I decide to let him pull back, I come right down there, I scoop the ankle pick. So the term ankle pick to me is a little disingenuous. I think it should be called a heel scoop. Because when we're here, and I get that weight down and across, I'm not looking to grab his ankle, because if I go to pull his ankle, nothing's going to happen. If I make a cup for his heel, and I just give him a little tug, he'll come right off. A couple of key points to keep in mind. When we're working on this technique, we can start from either side and finish on either side. So what I mean by that is if I'm here, I'm not married to this side. If I decide I want to get this leg forward, and I want to come around to the outside, I can still get some backward push and scoop his heel right out. So now, as we're on this technique, you always want to make sure, especially for jiu-jitsu rules, you end up on top or in a beneficial position. I don't want to incite a scramble just to make it harder for myself. I use as little energy as possible. As I set this up, my position's there, the off balancing, left foot's forward, across. So now as I'm going forward, I'm clearing this leg across my outside leg. Boom. So now once I've cleared that, I'm essentially in side control. For me, it's very important to get a good side control, controlling this front elbow here. The elbow that's close to you is the escape elbow. So instead of worrying about just flattening them, I want you to think about grabbing this elbow up. You're going to insert your knee under their shoulder blade. So now Vlad's orientation is that way. We've now just added an extra step for him to reverse the side control position. Before he can do anything, he has to get his orientation facing me. Exactly, right? So that's a whole extra step. So now just reaching over, getting a nice grip is great. But what's even better is reaching behind his head, using your 4 fingers, and grabbing the interior of his armpit and making him come real close. You'll get flexion on his head, and you'll get a very tight squeeze on his diaphragm. It's a great cooking position. You don't need to advance this position right away because they're going to scramble or flail. Exactly. Once they do that, typically, we'll grab this wrist and I'll press it all the way down. Now, with this technique, you want to be careful that you're not going all the way out here. The more I go out here, exactly, Vlad can fight for his underhook, and then all this beautiful work I did is for nothing. Instead, I bring him to me, I wait for his hand to cross this center line. If he's here, it's dangerous. If he comes in to push on me, boom. So now I'll switch, hand to hand. So for an Americana finish, a lot of people will go away and start to flex. Personally, I think that the tighter you bring it to someone's body, and we're underneath, very little movement, and you'll get a tap. What'd you think?
It's awesome, man.